get me wrong.
And you don't believe there is a shadow government? Really? They're promoting it on the news as if it's normal.
But it would force Trump to throw out anything with 47th president on it. And there's one more idea. A shadow government, similar to the UK.
What did you say?
A group of lawmakers that mirrors the cabinet and publicly challenges them. Say Senator-elect Adam Schiff as Shadow Attorney General, Congressman Gregory Meeks, Secretary of State, or Colorado Senator Michael Bennet as Treasury Secretary. Well, that idea isn't just coming from a strategist, but a lawmaker. And joining me now, the man behind this idea, Congressman Wiley Nickel, a Democrat from North Carolina. No dream music needed. You're in person with us. Congressman, why do you think this is the way to possibly challenge this administration?
First of all, this is something we can do. This is something that definitely can happen. And they've been doing it for over 100 years in the UK. Mm-hmm. So this is an idea that his time has come. And if we do the exact same thing against Trump, we're going to get the same results. We have to step up our game. We have to go toe-to-toe with Trump. And it's not just about saying, what we're against. It's about saying what we're for and putting our best messengers out there to go toe-to-toe. They put Elise Stefanik at the UN. We should have someone going one-on-one with her, talking about, what we would do better and why the choices they make are wrong.
That doesn't convince you? Just a person speaking on CNN? Well, let's go to Congress. Let them say it for you. You're gonna believe them, right?
If Trump attempts to weaponize the justice system against his political opponents with Matt Gaetz at the helm, we could see incoming Senator Adam Schiff as our shadow attorney general, arguing against replacing our independent prosecutors with Trump loyalists. If Trump seeks to eliminate the Department of Education, Congresswoman Johanna Hayes, a former Teacher of the Year, could step up as shadow education secretary to loudly defend public education in the United States. If Trump orders Marco Rubio to hand Ukraine and much of Eastern Europe to Russian President Vladimir Putin, Congressman Greg Meeks, as Shadow Secretary of State, could be a strong voice in support of maintaining international relationships and protecting democracy at home and abroad. Senator Michael Bennet as Shadow Treasury Secretary, and Congresswoman Susan DelBene as Shadow Commerce Secretary could help ensure the middle class and small businesses have a voice in government and call out Trump's proposed tax cuts for billionaires and corporations. As Shadow Defense Secretary, Congressman Adam Smith, a great representative for the people of Washington and not a Fox News host, could counter Trump's threat to use military force against his political opponents and work to ensure that the Department of Defense stays loyal to the Constitution and not some wannabe dictator.
I know I have to play the whole clip. I'll try to put all the links now in my description, but you get my point.
There's roughly 3 million people who work for the federal government. Of those, the president basically appoints 3,000, and it takes forever to get them through.
Yeah.
So we have roughly 3 million people who don't report to anyone. Nominally, yes, they're supposed to report to the executive branch, but the president can't fire him. We talked about on the previous show, if Elon had gone into Twitter and he hadn't been allowed to fire anyone, do you think he could have restored free speech to Twitter? Of course not. They just would have kept doing whatever they wanted to do. And that is the big problem in the federal government right now, is we are ruled by a fourth branch of government that is not in the Constitution, that doesn't report to anybody. It is not subject to elections. We can't vote them out, and we can't fire them.
Why?
And they have been in the forefront of trying to stop Trump and the larger reform movement that he represents. Ever since Trump got elected in 2016, remember, it was members of the administrative state, specifically the security state, who said, don't worry, we're going to be the insurance policy against Trump. And they have done everything possible through the Russiagate hoax, through lawfare, through the whole Steele dossier hoax, to basically try and stop Trump and the reform movement that he represents. And to this day, the big question of Trump's second term will be whether he can finally subdue this bureaucracy and bring it under Democratic control, under the control of the executive branch, as the American people want, and as I think the Constitution intended. Right now, we are run by an unelected branch of government that has to stop. And what Trump represents is not dictatorship, but democracy, the triumph of democracy over this bureaucracy.
That's wild, right? That's 3 million, but the president only controls 3,000 that he adds, and it's hard to fire them, and that's not a democracy? That's not a shadow government? That's wild. I would say if a president comes, 3,000. If he goes, gone 3,000. Very simple.
You're fired.
Перше, сильна Україна. Вона повинна бути сильною для будь-якої дипломатії. Хочу ще раз це підкреслити.
Але США не лише потенційний посередник в переговорах, це країна, яка надає величезні обсяги допомоги Україні і яка може спонукати нас до того, щоб ми сіли за стіл переговорів. Який меседж ви отримали від Дональда Трампа під час тих контактів, які у вас з ним були? Тобто він, як він каже? Він каже, я стану президентом і сідайте за стіл переговорів. Як це виглядає?
Я думаю, що він так не каже. Ми Ми незалежна Україна, і ми, мені здається, в час цієї війни наш народ, і я особисто в перемовинах зі Сполученими Штатами Америки і з Трампом, і з Байденом, і з іншими європейськими лідерами довели, що з нами риторика «сідай і слухай» не працюючи. І це не через те, що ми такі, а через те, що так ми повинні відноситись в принципі до будь-якої країни, будь-якого народу, будь-якого лідера. Поважати. Це, в принципі, рівність, одна з цих цінностей, за які ми боремося сьогодні.
This is equality, one of these values that we are fighting for. Equality for who? The taxpayer?
I think I'm just in shock.
Give me your freaking money because I need to be able to sit down with Russia. But I don't want to say that. I don't want to laugh. But it's so condescending something like, you don't have the right to not give me the money and not sit down with somebody I have a war with.
Any holidays if I had to only pick the ones where everyone agreed with me. And so now there are times
Max
and
wouldn't be with you.
I check in with myself and say, am I up for this? Because I also know struggling with mental health. There are times I'm not, and that's okay. You step away. But it will never be the defining point because toxic personalities don't have political affiliations. It's a personality trait that sucks. And we all are related to people like that. So whatever your reason is, I would never let my politics be the reason I don't show up to see my family because they won't always be there.
I'm going to disagree.
I'm not surprised.
I found it very interesting how Sarah looked at Sonny in a way like, we're talking about you. It's not the politics that makes you different. It's the fact that I believe you're freaking toxic.
I completely understand her point because I really do feel that this candidate, President-elect Trump, is just a different type of candidate. From the things he's said and the things he's done and the things he will do, it's more of a moral issue for me. And I think it's more of a moral issue for other people. We're just, I would say it was different when, let's say, Bush got elected. You may not have agreed with his policies, but you didn't feel like he was a deeply flawed person, deeply flawed by character, deeply flawed in morality.
A lot of Dems called him deeply
did at the
flawed and
time.
humanized him.
But you got to admit, they're very different figures. I mean, you along with Milley and along with John Kelly warned us about how deeply flawed he was as a candidate. And so I think when people feel that someone voted not only against their families, but against them and against people that they loved, I think it's okay to take...
Sonny, I think you're wrong because back in the day when we disagreed with a person, we didn't call them Hitler.
No.
Just a little higher.
Please?
There's no way. We didn't say we protected democracy by removing freedom of speech. And that is why ABC brass scrambled to bring in pro-Trump voices to The View and other shows panic mode because they're realizing if we keep speaking like that, there will be no shows because a lot of conservative women have a voice. A lot of left-leaning people that think a little socially conservative have a voice. And without them, right now, they're gonna lose the show. But that's the issue also because you have an audience that has been taught that whenever somebody might be conservative, we're just gonna talk down on them.
I will not change my viewpoint because it didn't win this election, but I will open my ears to people that said, I have issues too and they're different from yours and this is why. And I think that's why what she did was so important because she and Donald Trump are rarely put in the same sentence. And the fact that she got responses of people saying, you both seem to care about the working class, we sit here not voting for Donald Trump saying, huh?
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah.
But there's a point there because there were millions and millions of people that felt heard. And that's what I'm trying to lock into. It won't change my stance, or maybe it will. I'm open to someone trying to convince me.
That Donald Trump is good for people?
If that's what you're hearing, you're missing my whole point.
And I think Sonny hosting is the first to go, but then again, she is the one that brings more rating and more comments, so maybe she will never go.
Let the hate flow through you.
It is what it is. It's all about entertainment. But in the end, the problem is this. How did Trump win a lot of women?
On February 22nd, Jose Ibarra put on a black hat, a hoodie-style jacket, and some black kitchen-style disposable gloves. And he went hunting for females on the University of Georgia's campus. And in his hunt, he encountered 22-year-old Laken Riley on her morning jog. And when Laken Riley refused to be his rape victim, he bashed her skull in with a rock repeatedly. That is what this case is all about. The evidence will show that Laken fought. She fought for her life. She fought for her dignity. And in that fight, she caused this defendant to leave forensic evidence behind. She also marked her killer for the entire world to see. The forensic evidence that he left behind in this fight is his DNA, and only his DNA and Laken's, underneath Laken's right fingernails. He also left behind in a struggle with her over her phone, because the court will hear that she called 911. He left behind his left thumbprint on her iPhone, which was found not far from her body at the crime scene. And it is that forensic evidence alone that would give you enough evidence to find him guilty as charged on the counts in this indictment. But the evidence in this case will come in basically three forms. There will be forensic evidence, there will be digital evidence, and there will be video evidence. And all three forms of those evidence will point to one person, Jose Ibarra, as the killer of Laken Riley.
And that is why a lot of ladies voted for Trump, because whenever they want to talk about something that makes them worry, most people would say, well, white people do it more, so we shouldn't care about the little that they are doing. Okay.
A 22-year-old nursing student, I know you've been following this, Laken Riley in the state of Georgia was murdered allegedly by an undocumented Venezuelan migrant. The suspect had been detained by Border Patrol upon crossing, released with temporary permission to stay in the country. He then went on allegedly to commit crimes twice, once in New York for driving a scooter without a license and once in connection with a shoplifting case in Georgia. Did those states and their law enforcement communicate to the federal government that this had happened? Should this man have been deported?
A few thoughts. First, Margaret, first and foremost, an absolute tragedy, and our hearts break for and our prayers are with the family, number one. Number two, and importantly, as a prosecutor, having prosecuted violent crime and other crimes for 12 years, one individual is responsible for the murder, and that is the murderer. And we work very closely with state and local law enforcement to ensure that individuals who pose a threat to public safety are indeed our highest priority for detention and removal.
But are you saying there that the federal government had been informed about this individual and the alleged crimes he had committed in those states? Because he could have been deported if that was the case. Was there a breakdown in the system?
So, Margaret, there are a number of cities around the country that have varying degrees of cooperation with the immigration authorities. We firmly believe that
New York did not?
We firmly believe that if a city is aware of an individual who poses a threat to public safety, then we would request that they provide us with that information so that we can ensure that that individual is detained if the facts so warrant.
And after hearing his response, I'm not surprised a lot of left-leaning ladies decided to vote red. It's very simple, but I'm surprised I still don't see it.
Don't get me wrong, ma cosa kita bong. Butta fire na mi blonde, kush hash purple skunk, criollo colombici jam jam, dur loqueta verdetta welcome.